we are very, very excited and lucky to have Dayanita Singh with us today, who we at the museum have been working together for almost a decade or so.
Yeah.
And I can safely say, I guess that both, I mean, in KNMA, this is our 10th year anniversary year. Both Kiran Nodar Museum of Art, as well as Dayanita's practice as an individual artist and as a museum maker, both have grown concurrently, almost parallelly. And it's a beautiful, it's an important lens for me to think through, because it, in one ways it kind of projects museum not as a static structure, not as a ready-made buildings, but as something also which is capable, which can be fragile, can be vulnerable, and can die also, so it kind of puts forth a window where an equal exchange can happen, and I really like this parallel of artist growth and a museum's growth, and really excited. Hope lot of secrets that we have been harboring, and over these many long conversations that Dayanita has had with Mrs. Kiran Nodar, with Rubina Karode, who's the director and chief curator of the museum. Over the years, a lot of things are going to spill over. Let's see how it goes. And I have to say, I have many surprises for you.
Oh, you do too?
Yes.
Well, that'll be a lot of fun, because I have some that, let's see how they go.
Yeah. Let's take a step by step. Yeah. Okay. So maybe we can. So, how are you joining us today? As the director of the Museum Bhavan, or in what?
I forgot to bring my triangle. It says director, curator, registrar. And now I need one that says artist, but artist is not important. I think I'll join you as museum director, because I think that's where I want to make a few shifts, or was trying to. So I'm here as the director of Museum Bhavan, a traveling family of museums.
And which we were lucky to host and facilitate and communicate and converse with in 2015, where we held an exhibition. It came to us, it was the Artist Museum resided at the Kiran Nodar Museum of Art in December 2015 for a duration of around a month and a half. Yeah, I think it was a month and a half.
I don't remember. There are other things I remember.
Maybe we can start from there, from what you remember.
What I remember is the opening at the Hayward Gallery of Museum Bhavan. And there was a meeting of the Board of Trustees of Museum Bhavan behind Museum of Chance, in front of Museum of Furniture at 7 p.m. So while the opening was going on and wonderful curator Stephanie Rosenthal was making her speech, me, Gautam Thapar, Sunil Khilnani, and Hans Ulrich were having a urgent museum trustees meeting, because Museum Bhavan was meant to live in my house, and this whole space was supposed to be Museum Bhavan. And you know that angular wall where there's a light? I was going to cut out a big window there, massive window, like a shop window. And and all the museums would be parked here. And every week I would show a different museum. But I was told that to be called a museum, it has to be open to the public. So I decided it'll be the first full moon and all of that. And, the museums were made for Museum Bhavan to be here. But while we showed them at Hayward, to our complete surprise, mine, and maybe not Jane's as much, but there was invitations from the Art Institute in Chicago, MMK in Frankfurt. And I thought, this is amazing. People want to see my museums. And so I was getting quite chuffed with myself and very excited. And when I came to India, I met with the Radhika Chopra and Rajan in in a situation I won't describe. That has to remain absolutely secret. But Rajan was shocked that I was not on Instagram. Rajan was heading Google at that time. So he and Radhika quickly made me an Instagram account. And then he told me about the Google Cultural Institute. And he said, look at it. And I looked at it. And I looked at the Louvre. And I looked at the Met. And I said, but my museum needs to be there. Now I have my museum bhavan. I have the trustees. Everything, there was, all the conditions were fulfilled. It'll be open to the public. And so I asked Rajan if he would introduce me to the person from the Google Cultural Institute. And he said, how wonderful. And he introduced me to Bhaskar. So I was very excited because I said, okay, now my museum is going to live alongside the Louvre and the Met. I don't care if nobody else thinks it's relevant. I think it's relevant. And so with great hopes, I had a meeting with Bhaskar and he said, I'm really sorry, you have a wonderful idea, but we can only show the museums that are institutions or trusts, something like that. Like it couldn't just, I couldn't just make a museum and say, I'm calling it a museum, therefore it's a museum. So I was a little hurt. I didn't say anything to him, but it stayed with me. And subsequently, Rubina invited me to show at KNMA. And I thought, wow, maybe. And then we were going to show it in the whole of KNMA, one museum in one room, and it was going to be a big show. But then something happened and Rubina said, I'm really sorry, Dayanita. We can only give you this space on the side. And where I had shown in part of it before. And I'm sure Rubina expected me to say, in that case, we're not going to do the show because, each museum requires its own space. So I thought, no. The idea of Museum Bhavan is that it can fit in my house. So if you're giving me as much space, I should be able to fit it in. And that's when the penny dropped. And I said, I'm going back to Bhaskar because now I'm in an institute. And I saw that KNMA was already on Google Cultural Institute. And I thought, this is it. This is the afterlife of my museum or the larger life of my museum. But now it's turned out to be the afterlife of my museum because the museums are no longer with me. And then we had an opening and, like KNMA has these fantastic parties. It was a great party. And I was watching, hardly anybody came in. I was watching friends on Instagram having a party outside, but not coming in to meet me or to see the work, more important. So I was quite disappointed. And I thought maybe this is the way the world is going to be, that it's going to become more and more of an effort to come to the museum. So back to Bhaskar, Google Cultural Institute, and saying to Bhaskar that, well, you said institute, so here I am. I'm in an institute. So you don't have to cover the whole KNMA again. You just do my exhibition. And he said, that's true. That's very possible. But our camera is not, it can't come into KNMA. It's a big machine. It doesn't just, you can't just bring it in for one exhibition.
Yeah, with temporary exhibitions, that's a challenge.
Yes. But then I had Umang Bhattacharya, Simrit Duggal, and myself. So we photographed it as Google would have done. And because we are all photographers, it wasn't so difficult to work out how their camera would have worked through the system. And so now my exhibition lives on the Google, my museum lives on the Google Cultural Institute. And there too, I had to do all kinds of secret things because I thought now if I tell KNMA about it, then, that's another discussion. So I just decided I'm just doing this. And that's the secret that I thought at some point I should share with KNMA because it was good. No, I got my museum there because now it's all scattered all over the world in different museums. So the only place you can visit my museum is at the Google Cultural Institute.
So what you're actually saying is the digital museum was a precondition, was a precursor. The thought of it was a precursor to the physical exhibition that you
at KNMA.
at
When I
KNMA.
made the museums, it was not the case. But then once Rajan told me about the Google Cultural Institute, and I thought, that's the life. I'll put all the documents there, all the footage, everything that I can gather together. So that's what we did. We made quite an exhaustive site on Google Cultural Institute for KNMA. But you know what? Let me share my screen.
Yeah, why don't you?
Host disabled attendee screen sharing.
How's that?
Because KNMA doesn't want me to show what I did with their museum.
Let me type in a message. Kavya, are you listening to us?
I am. I'm actually just checking it out because I have not done any such thing. Hopefully it'll be sorted in a minute. Just give me.
Okay.
But from what I remember, Dayanita, this is the backstory that you're sharing now. The desire the need for you to have the Museum Bhavan in place in a physical space, in a museum, in an institutional capacity, to be able to exist online. From what I remember, the invitation as a guest museum to reside.
Start your screen share.
Yeah. Oh, there we go.
Yeah, you can see my screen. So you go to Google, you type in Google Cultural Institute, in that you put conversation chambers. And here it is. Exactly like, no, there's extended information elsewhere also. I've slightly forgotten now, but yes, notes exactly what I want them, as I wanted. But, I sort of sneaked in pictures from the Hayward Gallery because that had a better, I had better images from there for the opening. And then, so I mixed them up, but there was no need to tell anybody because I just wanted my museums to be there on the Google Cultural Institute. And so we did all the panning and the zooming, not in the way that the Google camera would have done, but as we were copying what the Google camera would have done. And Simrat, bless her, did all the uploading, which, as you probably know,
it's very tedious.
Quite something.
It's quite something for all exhibitions.
And Umang, I mean, making, such precise images, because it wasn't the kind of picture I would be doing normally. And so you just walk through the KNMA and you look at the storage and there's all this information. And, so I could write exactly what I want. In the middle of that, I could insert little videos. And so I walked through, or you walk through my Museum Bhavan and look at the various museums. And in the Museum Bhavan, I also made that was my confession chamber. So I turned Museum of Machines into a confession chamber, and you could go inside and do confessions. And then you remember I did all that programming.
Yeah.
This is interesting because I think here it says museums also give birth to other museums. The Museum of Furniture, for instance, produced the Museum of Vitrines, which hangs behind it. Anyway, just to say that now that all my museums are scattered in different museums in the world, wonderful museums, that's what you're looking at is my confession chamber. The only place that my Museum Bhavan exists or can exist is on Google Cultural Institute.
No, this is very, very interesting.
Yes, because I think this is going to be the future. I'm not trying to do a plug for Google Cultural Institute, but I do think that there will be an opening, there will be a party or something or talks, and then we will photograph the work extensively. And then those images will be sent to Berlin or Mexico, wherever the next show is, because I'm not sure we can continue to do these massive exhibitions with massive shipping, all these crates going from Star Worldwide to shippers there. So, I imagine making something like this, making a book which is an experience of the exhibition, having a version on Google Cultural Institute. I think I have to register a trust to be able to put my next work there. And then perhaps there's going to be a shift in how we're going to think of exhibitions. It's not just the traffic from my house to your museum, because I was thinking people don't have 2 hours to sit in traffic just to come and see my museum bhavan, no?
Yes. From what I remember, Dayanita, it was not a simple hosting of the museum bhavan at KNMA. It had a separate entrance. It had a separate bookshop. It had its own gift shop. Yes. And it had its own team of people managing the museum, inventorying the museum. If you remember, it wasn't exactly a collaboration. So it was in a certain kind of an ambiguous zone where we did a loan form agreement, but it was with the artist, with you as the artist, but it wasn't really exactly between 2 institutions. But now, 5 years on, when we look at it, it's absolutely stunning to reflect back on the frictions, on the tensions in between of inhabiting and cohabiting spaces. I wonder what your thoughts are on that movement of, because pop-up conversations would happen and suddenly there would be a change of new museums would have popped up, and so which made and which kind of challenged the very conception of mutability of the museum itself, that it can just gyrate through a very personal conversation with a living artist, and with someone walking in.
It was too good an opportunity, no? I live in Delhi. KNMA was here. I had quite clearly in the beginning said, this is my museum. I'm the curator. Rubina was very generous in sort of allowing me that space. And what I missed in museums are they're so sterile and dead and so pre-formatted that there's no scope for spontaneity, because there's artworks that are precious. So, all of that has gone into making Museum Bhavan. And at KNMA, I had the possibility of, I remember one day I turned it into a library for photographers, and I made the whole Museum of Chance room with long tables and brought 5 photographers whose work I loved and had their books. That's what we did. We had a archivist award for Mayank Austin Sufi and a book release for Namita's mother. Basically all kinds of things that wouldn't necessarily happen in a museum. I just realized it's so important to activate the work. I couldn't have just placed Museum Bhavan there and disappeared, as one does in exhibitions, especially when they're abroad, no? And now if I had to do it again, I would actually become director in residence. With Museum of Shedding, I now have a bed and a desk. So I would live in the museum. So that in my house, that's what I was planning, that big window, I would be constantly rearranging the museums. Somehow I miss the spontaneity in museums. And so I did all my experimenting at KNMA.
I know. We were the guinea pigs, but we were at the end. So in fact, our documentations of the exhibitions are also very different. The images that we have in the museum archive are very different from the ones that you have put also on the, on the
because
Google
I
Culture
also have a
Institute.
problem with that. I have lots of problems with museums. I love museums, really deeply love the idea of the museum, but I have a lot of problems with them. And one of them is the kind of books that are made, the installation photos, the afterlife of the work, like a PDF should give somebody the feeling of what it was like. I even sneaked NDTV in. I don't know if we were able to get your permission, because they wanted to do an art program. And I said, no, in the future, the catalog is going to be a video, and you need to put your camera on my shoulder and let me walk you through my exhibition, and that should become the catalog. They just did some interview and left. I don't think they were particularly very excited about my idea for the new kind of catalog of the museum. But these are all really important things to think about now, no?
Yeah, absolutely. So, so it kind of allows a different web to emerge. And for us, what was important was that we were looking at it in continuation to what other projects and works that you had done. I would like to share something, something that you might not exactly remember.
Not possible.
Kavya, I am sharing my screen now. Is it, can you all see? Yeah, I guess so. So,
oh my God,
this is one of your early performances, which was done. Yes, so that the first performance ever.
No, the first structure. This is before I made the museums. What year is this?
This is 2013.
Huh.
7 contemporary exhibition, and here you gave us a small tour only for the museum staff and a couple of more people who joined in as special guests. So let's have a look.
I think we have to unplug for the sound.
Almost like taking a deep breath and stilling yourself, feeling all the nonsense of one's day-to-day life, and holding a certain note. I don't know if I can explain that editing process more than that, but it's like there's a certain note. To work with that note. You follow? And so, one off image that might have purpose to serve. I might want that one image that doesn't quite fit in, but I want it there. But it has to be a very conscious decision. So I came down to these 52. And because Kiran had stressed on the silver part, that was good because it gave some restriction. And I sort of enjoyed that. So it was like a game that I was playing with Kiran not even knowing about it. You know? She didn't know why this set of 52 and how it came up. And gradually over time, when she looks at these images, I think she'll start to see some of the thoughts, some of the secrets that I have planted.
Secrets.
But it's not for me to say. Some of it I can't even articulate. But Kiran knows the layers to what I'm talking about. So she's my addressee. This is an edit that I made for her, for this space. And through that came this realization that my works all connect. I could bring Blue Book and put it here and it would work.
That's very naughty of you.
Yeah, so you remember now the silver set, one of the first where you started putting together and
changing. I used to go every week and change the images. Yeah, I really, that's also sort of, that's pre the museums, or the idea that I could go into the exhibition and go in and change the images every time. And
the cabinets are there, so changing it continuously.
Yeah, I tried it at the Tate with similar cabinets, but you can't get past the art handlers. It's a big problem. Even if you were inviting the director to change the images, it still needs, it's much more complicated than I had realized. So I think for the next, if I were to ever to make a museum again, I need a performance art contract and not a photography contract, because that would allow me to move my work myself.
That's very interesting. So at this note, I have to share this. Give me a minute. I'm going to do share screen again. Kavya, please allow me to do share screen, and there we go. And here we have one of very early gems again.
I wanted to keep them here. And then, as you all probably know, I used to come every month or every other month, come and do something and disturb it, so that people would say, you know, what kind of a museum is being run here? The work keeps changing. There are only nails there. They forgot to put the photos. Yeah, somebody said that. Yeah, and I would love if, by the time we have the closing, there's really no images here. There's just, because of these lines that have formed, we leave that. And there's the residue left of the image. And let's see what that means. That this room for 9 months now has had these images inside it. And finally, before we do that, we just remove everything and put it into these cabinets. It's all there, but you can't touch it. You can't take it out. And all you see are the nails and that beautiful text of Michael Ondaatje. Suddenly there's a connection happening between these.
Well, what can I say is, if you sort of believe in something and you just go for it, and you don't care about what someone's going to think and whether it's funny or,
But we had a lot of curiosities then. We had passerbys, visitors asking questions if they could touch it. So that 1 year, 9 months, I think that exhibition ran for 9 months, 7 contemporaries. And we had to engage with many of these curiosities and questions around photographs, around different sets that people were familiar with. Navigating and understanding your photographs also. This belongs to this set, this belongs to this set, and but the silver set collapses all of that and creates another set.
Have to do that, no? Have to do it, especially for photography. My God, there's nothing more boring for me than to go to a photography exhibition.
But now tell me, a bit curious about how now that your museums are all distributed, dispersed in different museums, and so how do they behave structurally? When they were in close contact with each other inside the museum Bhavan, they were activating a field of their own as an autonomous entity, and it's that autonomy which of an artist museum, on of those gestures also is what makes them fragile as well as temporary and memorable and very intimate. But now when the Museum of Chance goes to Museum of Modern Art, MoMA, and to different and then travels again independently, how do these structures behave?
So that's a great question, and it's a little bit of a sadness for me because I didn't quite realize. See, in the beginning, I made them as one work that would stay in my house, and you would seek an appointment and then you could come and look at one museum, but the others would always be around. But then when, the Louisiana Museum wants to acquire a museum, or the MMK does, I thought, okay, I can let go of this, I can let go of that. But the one museum I couldn't let go of was Museum of Chance, because Museum of Chance is about chance, and it's about chance over 30 years. And even at the KNMA, we had it in a separate room because it's the culmination of all my museums, because up to then I was using the categories that exist in museums, photography, furniture, etc., etc. And then I said, but I don't want those categories. These museums need to be mixed much more, and furniture shouldn't just be in furniture. And so Museum of Chance allowed for all of that. It allowed me to put a range of images together, and it was very difficult to edit because it had to work in any combination. So if you remember, in the Museum of Chance room, I invited Shane Zaveri to make a museum, and he made a museum of erotics. And by chance, the visitors that day were the CMAP group of MoMA. I haven't checked with them if the ideas got planted then, or when I showed it at Bhaudaji Lad. No, by that time they had already expressed interest. But that's another great secret story, which is I said to Jane that, fine, all the other museums have been acquired, but Museum of Chance, I want to keep till the end of my life because it's my mother museum. It's the center of all of my creativity, almost, I could say. And she said, well, anything is fine, Dayanita, but you have to be clear about it. You can't say to a museum, yes, it's on offer, then say it's not on offer. You can't do that. So I said, okay, so let's say it's not on offer. And she said, are you absolutely sure? Because we can't say no, and then it arrives, it shows up. So I said, well, you know, Jane, if it's a MoMA, then I suppose we could reconsider. With the idea that, of course, it would never happen, because why would MoMA want to buy such a massive museum? They didn't even have a single print of mine. So finally, when the call came, and the call came directly from Lucy, I couldn't believe it. I was sitting with my mother and saying, you know, ye mazak koi khel raha hai? Matlab, put on an American accent and say, you know, we'd like to buy a Museum of Chance. And then, of course, she said, nahi, ho to sakta hai, because, you know, mothers are like that. For them, sky is the limit. And my mother is very much sky is the limit kind of mother. And that's what happened. So the Museum of Chance, which was not to be made available to anyone except MoMA, ended up in MoMA. So that was also, but when I went back for the opening, I was, I must say, to answer your question, I missed the KNMA grouping, you know, and I was so grateful that this Google Cultural Institute, somehow I had managed to sneak my Museum Bhavan in, because now that's the only place you see it all together. It'll be a hell of a task, especially in the times to come, for someone to arrange for loans from different parts of the world, all with big museums that will have their own stipulations of how the work is to be shown, etc., etc. So that's a pointer for me and perhaps for other artists to maybe, you know, there are many artists, I can think of many colleagues of mine, one especially who'll say, you know, you just make the work and forget about it. But it's not like that for me. I can't just forget about it. And the afterlife of work is going to be so important. And what I'm calling the afterlife might actually be the only life now. I have a massive, massive show in Berlin in 2 years. Who knows what will happen in the world? Who knows, you know, and maybe I have to come back to KNMA and I have to request Rubina if she would give me the museum for 5 days. So I can install my work there. We can have a one-day exhibition, but mainly to be able to photograph it in the way that you just saw. So that maybe I send those images in a PDF to Stephanie and they get printed as a book there, because we don't know what's going to happen in the world. And, you know, art is hardly the priority at this time. So I think it's a good time it's time for artists to think about other ways of dissemination of the work. We can't depend on Star Worldwide and those big crates and the big galleries and the big museums. And in a way, that's what happened after MoMA acquired Museum of Chance. Of course, I was thrilled. I mean, who wouldn't be thrilled to be in the Museum
the new
of
MoMA.
And in the new MoMA. But then I actually got quite depressed, because I thought, my friends are very important to me, and my friends in all kinds of places in India, they would never be able to see it. You know, the people who came to KNMA, I don't know, some 2,000 people, 5,000, whatever. Only those people saw it, or 10,000, whatever. But nobody else would ever see it. I mean, what are the chances you would be in New York at the time when MoMA, if they decide to show it? Because museums acquire work, but they also keep it in storage, no? And that's when I went to Gerhard and I said, can we make a miniature Museum Bhavan? And that's what we did. And all the museums are inside here. And of course, I changed the names of some of the museums because I had made books of them already. And then I decided that this would be a time to take on the idea of mass-produced and unique. So inside you have a mass-produced object, but the covers are unique. So each box is unique. My dear friend Tepa made me 3,000 different boxes that were shipped to Germany.
Wow.
To also say, now, how are you going to position this? Like if KNMA acquires this box, are they going to put it in their library because they bought it for 60 or 70 euros? Or are they going to put it in their collection because it's actually a unique box? No two boxes covers look the same. So everything, there's like secret within secret within secret to, because it's fascinating, this world of being an artist, no? And once you start playing with that and teasing it, there are so many secrets to explore. I have so many secrets waiting inside me, waiting for the right opportunity. And then some just present themselves.
And so probably it's also like playing with nomenclatures, performing with the nomenclatures. The taxonomy that you do, it's a little maneuvering of the institution, a little bypassing, so where the fickleness is.
I'm not standing outside the museum and saying, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong. I'm inside the museum and making some suggestions for possibilities of, when I was in MoMA, I was very excited because Glenn Lowry had made the most amazing conversation about my work. And who would have imagined that of all the people in the world, the one who would really get what I was doing to the museum is the director of MoMA. So I met the wonderful curator of the Fluxus room, and I was wearing my 9-pocket jacket.
Yes.
And I did that. And I said, so tell me, why am I not in the Fluxus room? And it was wonderful because the new MoMA also gave me the kind of that confidence, because they've now mixed things. They mixed photography everywhere. So they can take from Museum of Chance images that they might want for a thread show, for a Bauhaus show, so many different possibilities. So I don't know if MoMA realizes, but I've actually embedded my archive into the museum and given them those boxes with which they don't have to always show the big museums. So everything that seems a limitation from the museum side becomes a challenge for me, and then I find my own ways around it. And that has been, I think that's what really sustains me. It's the problems. It's like, bring it on, Akanksha. Tell me that you can't do this in the museum. And that gets me thinking. These ideas don't come just like that. It's when I'm challenged, when the one I couldn't crack was the cafe, because we couldn't have a cafe with internet inside KNMA. And that I haven't been able to crack anywhere, because you're not supposed to have
food and coffee and water. Water supply.
Water would be a big problem.
Yeah, supply.
But I can show you something. Let me share the screen for a second. Host disabled attendee screen sharing. Okay, now I'm the host. Because only one person can show at a time, no?
Yeah, I guess so.
So now you can see my screen.
Not yet.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, now we
right.
can.
Now you see it. And now I have to move you. So that's my 9-pocket jacket. And that's, because after the museums had gone, I had to have something. And so we made the Museum Bhavan box. But that also wasn't enough. And anyway, the box got sold out fairly soon. So then I made the jacket so I could walk around to other people's openings and show them my museums. And it was lovely because, not everybody knows the whole story behind them or behind me. And some people would say, no, I'm really sorry. We don't have time right now, like you do to all those pizza delivery people. But I have been hearing from friends at this time of lockdown that they have my Museum Bhavan and they have exhibitions of them at different times. This is at an earlier time, of course, but my dear friend Bilal took the box to Agra and had an opening with his partner looking at the Taj. So people find their own ways of using the museums. I keep finding my own ways. And yeah, I thought I would show you this.
Wow. So this is like finding a new freedom.
Yes, exactly.
Disconnecting it from the other web and launching it with your own web of things.
Absolutely.
And references. And the pocket museum, the book museum allows you to build community or conversation communities around it.
Yeah, because again, I love the museum, but it's a very limiting space. So when I was at the Venice Biennale, while the Venice Biennale was opening, I had somehow got Prince Claus award to bring my book cart from India. And so while the opening was happening, I was selling my books outside.
This is 2011?
Yes. And inside, the books were on the wall. And I had persuaded Steigl to give me different colored covers. And I cut up the book and pasted them on the cover and made the exhibition. So people were completely confused, you know, like the book is on exhibit, but it's being sold outside for 30 euros. And then if you went to Campo San Stefano, then you went past Giorgio Mastino's gallery. And there it was being offered in an edition in these wooden structures for 200 euros. So somehow on one side, there's the museums, but on the other side, there's also the market. And the idea of always wanting to play with the market as well. I know it's a dangerous game, but it's fine. And here, I don't know how many of you noticed, I'm wearing the same sari that I'm wearing for my
wearing today.
Signing in Venice, yes. And the sari says, go away closer. I can bring my chest closer. And so it's like secret within secret within secret. Obviously, nobody there knew that Go Away Closer was the name of my last book, except maybe my publisher. It's like people can't keep up with all the different kind of secrets that are happening, because I also don't know them all. It's not like I have a plan, but you know, a challenge comes. A museum says, we'd love to show your work, but we don't have a budget for shipping the entire Museum of Chance exhibition. And so I make the suitcase museum. So on one hand, there's the Museum Bhavan box. I'm going to stop sharing. So there's the Museum Bhavan box, but then there's also the suitcase museum, which I posted today as my confessions of a museum maker, which I took to Venice to really test whether it can take whether the wheels were strong enough. So it's secret within secret within secret, and so many secrets that I don't know them. So upstairs in my studio, there's like a labyrinth, and I was joking with my Mayank Austin Sufi that my obituary would be that, you know, I sort of died while I was in one of those labyrinths because I couldn't come out, but then nobody could find me because doors close and things open out. But that's how I work. And it's somehow, I'm terribly lucky and blessed. Somehow it works out. I mean, not all of it. There are many failures also. But
the mischief continues.
Mischief, yeah. Mischief is keyword. Mischief is really important. And mischief with myself also, because I can't take myself also so seriously, no?
As a researcher of exhibition histories, this particularly piques my attention because it's one of those rare cases of exhibition making where exhibition making leads to the museum body, to the making of the museum body and museum form. And then once it consolidates, it solidifies, then the museum form returns to the exhibitions, to other exhibitions and to other institutions and other museums for a renegotiation. So it's
an ongoing work. It'll only finish when I finish. Now that even all the museums have gone into other museums, now I've got this Google Cultural Institute, no? So I might have an opening there tonight, for example. I'll find ways. Give me a problem and I'll find ways. I thrive on that.
I want to take you back to Venice again. That was file room, right? On the walls in 2011. What you showed in the book.
No, the book was shown
covers.
in 2013. So that was another secret of mine. 2011, I showed in Beaches Biennale. I showed the prints of File Room. 2011. But 2013, I had made the book File Room, and I showed the book. And obviously, if I had said to the curator that I've already shown this in Venice in the last Biennale, and maybe people don't pay attention and maybe they don't look at my work carefully, but hardly anybody came to say like, but didn't you show this work last year? I guess everyone was so enamored by the Mona video inside that they didn't pay attention. And I remember Susanna also said, Dayanita, this is the Venice Biennale, you can't bring your books in here. But at the very last minute, a large wall had to be constructed. And then she said, can you make a poster or something? What do we do with the wall? Because there was a sound problem. And I said, I can ask Steidl to send us a few File Room books. And by that time, it was too late to do anything else. So Steidl being Steidl, I think someone came with the books, and that's how they ended up on the wall in the Venice Biennale. And she didn't know that I had already organized for the book cart to be brought from Delhi by the Prince Claus Foundation, who had invited Okwi, who very kindly agreed to release the File Room book. So it's like, I know there is madness at the end of this road, but it's loops and secrets within secrets. And so nobody knows. I barely know everything that's going on.
And tying of loose threads happen, and meeting points, emerge from that. So we had at the KNMA, we had the luxury of loaning File Room before it became the File Museum, actually.
Right.
For 2 years. And it was one of the early works that we loaned from collection. So it's, of course, holds very dear place in our hearts. And so I want to share something that we did
only if I'm not in the video.
No, it's not a video. Don't worry.
I hate my voice like everybody does.
I'm gonna play this.
Oh my God, what is that?
Do you remember this? This is from 2012. Time Unfolded was the name. Crossings was the name of the exhibition. And
oh my God.
This is Bhatikir's.
Yeah, but it wasn't like that. This has all been introduced, right?
Yes. So this is Zuleika Chaudhary's performance.
Wow, it's beautiful. So she created these sections within our exhibition.
Yes, it was part of the installation was on for a month. It was called Walkthrough. So part of the Inhabiting the Museum series that I was curating at the museum in its early years, which was also trying to look at the kind of anxieties that the different kind of times, idea of times that exist inside museum spaces, how they interact with each other, inviting artists to engage with those times. So Zuleika produced this beautiful installation come piece, which was actually spread around the entire museum. So the museum was treated as a landscape. So you would walk through, and at the reception—
God, I missed this entirely.
At the reception, you would get a set of index cards and a map, which was like a jigsaw puzzle. And as you would walk in, you could read out from the index cards to the fellow visitor or to yourself, or could sit around anywhere. So for example, I'll just read out something to you once. Give me a minute. Like the first index card said, choose a place within the museum, read to the person accompanying you, read into the mic. And this is all happening at different parts of the museum space, or ask somebody to read to you, or ask the receptionist. Feel free to read while walking through. And then there were these text pieces, somewhere in one of the images that you can actually see those cards being placed right in this image.
Yeah. I see them. Yeah.
But File Museum for us became one point where this structure actually merged. You came out of Ranbir Kalikar's 4-channel video installation and into this, and where the entire burden of the structure of the archive, because File Room was continuously making us think of the archive this time, of different senses of time inside archives, as well as hidden objects that you can't see, that only time will reveal, and what
Secrets.
kind of unraveling and discovering that you need to go through at your own pace and at your own time. I'll read out one more index card. See people at the threshold, waiting with their belongings, or just standing, talking in whispers, not audible to you. Ground keeps changing, but they don't move. And also towards the end of the alley, a man is summoning and instructing a white horse. While it's dark here, often these empty bodies disappear. Only the white wounds illuminate the whole area, showing the white on white folds and textures of the skin. The heaviness of the foot that you feel is because of your own time. Try plotting events into lines and walk with an erasure. So
Gosh. I must have been traveling. I didn't see any of it.
Are you surprised by it?
Yes. I would have loved to see it, especially in File Room, not because it's my work, but because it's so close to the feeling of the structures that the museums have, which actually come from working in the archives. Because as you know, in India, now we have IKEA, but archives are sort of made at home, almost homemade archives. No, you have a space, you have stuff you have to put, and you call a carpenter and you make your shelves, and then you make a mezzanine because you run out of space. So that the museums actually came from working in archives, photographing in archives. So I would have loved to see that room.
It was quite stunning. The entire concentrated, the beams running through, the concentrated, the burden, the weight of it, and the tension that Zulekha had managed to bring to it, and in conversation with all the other works. So the fact that the exhibition was running for a year almost, and File Room was with us for almost 2 years. So this sort of an insertion was quite beautiful.
That's fantastic, and we need that so much in the museum space, and if nobody else going to do it, then maybe artists will do it themselves, because I'm so happy to hear about Zulekha's project. I must now try to find a video of it. Did she put it on Google Culture Institute?
No, at that time we didn't video document it. We just done photo documentation. Yeah. So what we have are our index cards, our audio recordings of people reading out, because the mics would be on in the entire museum. So one could actually hear if somebody was reading it out loud. So it was fun, actually, connecting all the works. So maybe we can move on to sharing some more secrets or some more teasing. I heard some stories about Robert Frank's book.
Oh my God.
Is that true?
Someone told me I have to be careful with telling that story because I could get into trouble legally. But there are bigger things to get into trouble for legally now. So I think many of my friends here, I know a lot of my friends are here. They know the story, but I'll repeat it. I'm sure my mother would love to hear it again. When I went to New York to study photography, the person that I was most impressed by, and it's not rocket science to say that, was Robert Frank. he was doing something completely else with photography than anyone in photography. And he had made a beautiful book called Lines of My Hand, beautiful large book, but it was $40. And I had to have the book because I just couldn't be a photographer. I couldn't be without that book. I had to have it, but I didn't have $40. And I wouldn't have had $40 for a while. And so one winter morning, I put on a big black coat and went in with my friend, Michael Richter. And Michael kept the sales lady. Thankfully, it was the ICP bookstore. He kept her busy. And I slipped the book into my coat and walked out quite calmly. And then, of course, as happens in films, we ran because that's what you've seen in films. So that was 88, I think. And in 1997, I got a call saying we're calling from Robert Frank's. There's a call from Robert Frank's lawyer. And I died. I thought, oh my God, there was a camera there. And after all these years, they've traced me as the one who stole the book, So this must be the FBI getting after me. And I tried to be very stern. And I said, yes, how can I help? And they said, Robert here has heard that you're doing a project where you're photographing families and you have no support for that. So he'd like to give you money. So I thought, what is going on here?
So sweet.
So he just wants to know how much money do you need? So I said, I don't like that. And then I said $10,000 because $10,000 felt like, I don't know, 10 crores today, like an impossible amount of money. And they said, we'll get back to you. And then in the mail, I got a check from Robert Frank for $10,000. And that's what I made my entire privacy book from. I lived off those $10,000 for 3 years. So it became this strange story. And of course, when I finally met Robert in 2002, he loved the story. I met him in the Scalo bookshop and he pulled out another book and he, made a drawing for me on it and said, I love that you stole my book. So yeah, it's something not to publicize, I guess. And I promise you, for those of you who will believe me, it's the only thing I've stolen in my life. But I had to. I couldn't have been who I am today without that book. So I had to have it. And now I have 2 copies. I have the copy we stole and I have the copy that Robert gave me.
Wow, that's really beautiful. We have a question here. So
1 second, before that, this reminds me there's something I would love to say, and this may be a good forum. So when Robert gave me this money, I got into a bit of a flap because I thought this might be a trap also. I was just, I don't know how old, but I felt very young and I didn't know how to handle these things. So I sent a message saying, these are family portraits, so I can't give you any prints. What do you want in exchange? And the message came back that Robert says, throw it in the sea if you want. The money is for you to do what you like. Buy a car, do anything. And that stayed with me, that idea of giving a grant. So now when we have grants where photographers have to give prints, where people have to make a negotiation, to me, that's not a grant. That's a commercial transaction. A grant is when you just believe in somebody and you give them the money and leave it to them to do whatever they want. And I learned that from Robert. And in my own small way, I try and do that again and again. I try my best even not to mention it to anybody, so nobody knows about it. I used to do this with film. Just when film was such an expensive thing to get, I would just send a brick of 100 rolls of film to a photographer that I thought needed to have film, because for me, film was the big expense. When friends would take me out to a fancy place for a dinner, I would be calculating, just give me the money this dinner has cost and I can buy 4 rolls of film with it. So I used to give this film grant, and I've continued doing that, but quietly. It has nothing to do with anybody else. And in those days, the person I was doing it to also didn't know where it was coming from. It was part of it. And that's something that would be lovely to discuss at some time. This idea of the grant and the generosity with which Robert Frank gave me that grant. I will honor that till the rest of my life. And even after, I'm already plotting for after.
That's lovely to know,
Sweet, no?
Dayanita. Very, very sweet. Very sweet. And that's the kind of generosity which, the kind of cultural infrastructure we have for contemporary art in India and in South Asia. So I think a lot of artists, young artists, kind of strive on that, on such small gestures and support by.
And the gestures are huge at that time.
At that time, yeah,
no
absolutely.
Amount of money today, no amount can compare with those $10,000.
And now it becomes absolutely all the more critical when we keep hearing stories of art students being stuck or things being not moving. A lot of artists struggling to make ends meet in this pandemic situation.
I think the grant is one option, but I think I would say to younger artists that you have to find your own forms of dissemination. We can't just depend on the gallery and the museum. I mean, one KNMA in this huge country, it's not enough, no?
Of course.
And how many galleries? Galleries can't do it. They can't handle all the artists. So artists have to find their own forums for dissemination of the work. And maybe some of us can help set those up. I hope I can sort of point some people in that direction, with my jacket and my 9 books, and I can come into KNMA and have my exhibition, and by the time your guards come and ask me to leave, I will have already shown my work to a few people.
While at the moment we are in a kind of a strange situation because museum is also in a mall. The questions or the problems of put on the public spaces.
To see the Zarina show, and I thought, if they allow 5 people a day, I want to be one of those 5. But I guess with the mall, it's impossible, no?
Yes,
even if museums can open.
Yeah, for us, it will have to be, it's combined with the access to the mall, mall space. But what your proposition of portable museums and easy formats of working and reworking the idea of the museum and the artist museum is very exciting and of course not new per se, but it gyrates you, it titillates you, and it invites you to position one's own practice and one's own mind. So it's interactive and it's engaging.
It's actually quite old. I've recently realized what is the PDF? MoMA did a show called Museum as Muse. So this idea goes back a long way. And obviously, not much came of it because one is still trying to struggle with fairly similar things. I was amazed when I met those ancestors of mine with the idea of the small museum or the portable museum. And Hans Ulrich, I'm sure has a nano museum, which actually fits in your pocket. He's been promising me that I'll be the next artist in residence. That hasn't happened as yet. But artists, once they realize that the gallery and the museum is not enough, they will find amazing forms. They're all out there waiting to be explored. It's just that in India, unfortunately, everyone has become so dependent on the idea of the gallery for being an artist, no? It's lovely, but it's just one form. And we have just one museum. So obviously we have to find shop windows,
The scene is definitely changing, and in the last couple of months, of course, there have been a number of grants that have been put out, and there are a number of small initiatives and museums also shaping up, and I think that makes for a very dynamic museum scene, and I think that the younger generation of artists are more interested in figuring out their own ways of working and reworking within the system, because the formats that they're interested in.
I think someone said Zoom Biennale.
No, I didn't see that. but of course, why not? Now that the biennales are, but there could be I mean, at some point, of course, people are also saying that there's an exhaustion with Zoom and with other forms of, web communication.
Yeah.
That is bound to happen.
I have some good news. I have some good news to share.
Go ahead, please.
I heard that Mac, this wonderful photo publisher, the sales of his books have gone up in the lockdown.
Wow.
Because people probably, there's only so much you can get from the internet. And so what could be closer to an experience of an artwork, or in some cases it's the work itself, is a photo book. So I'm actually, people are coming back to the idea of the book as an experience. And then when you have a book which can also be an exhibition, then you're talking. So I think once this is over, we're going to realize a lot more about what the book can be. And I think we'll see many forms emerging out of the book.
Yeah. Yeah. Kind of, I agree with that, and I'm hopeful. It's going to push us creatively, and also, as we self-reflect and think about these frameworks.
Anyway, it has to push us, because this museum and gallery model is just not enough. One KNMA, one Kochi Biennale.
So here we have a question, and I think it would be nice to address it and think about it, and think out aloud, even though we may not have perfect answers. So Prerna Shekhar asked, how do you see public art shaping post-pandemic? Post-pandemic is a long way to go, long way to go. And I think no one would have a right answer to that for sure. But in terms of what do you think in terms of interaction within public and the kind of distrust or that may between bodies, between people communicating with each other in terms of touch, so it will, of course, it will kind of, it's going to have an impact on social relations, and of course very erudite scholars and erudite people are speaking about it and thinking about it and writing about it. But so what are your thoughts on
my first thought, and I will think about it a lot more as all of us will continue to do so. My first thought is it's the book. That the book can really become the public art, provided it doesn't cost the kind, we have to think through the numbers of it. And so then if the book can also be an exhibition, and the book can also be an experience, and then if it's a book that arrives with your newspaper, or it's a book that you can buy at the grocery store, that's how I would put my work out. And, you would give up on perhaps a certain style quality, but dissemination, especially for photography, is so important. But when I say the book or I say the photo book, I'm not just talking about photography. I think I keep saying to my artist colleagues, who cares about when your exhibition happened at KNMA, whether it happened or not? What remains is the book. And so stop making books that are like catalogs, but make books that are like an experience, another level of the work. And perhaps that's how I would answer right now. Perhaps the book is going to transform into the public experience of art, one of the ways.
For me, one of the takeaways from this conversation is definitely the confidence and the autonomy with which Museum Bhavan, from its first instance of inception, began to kind of exude and carry forward, and so that autonomy is hard to sustain, and kind of completely keep arguing against the systems that you keep colliding with.
That's what artists do, no?
Exactly. So if we continue, so as a response to this question, maintaining and retaining these moments of autonomy, which are very individual based. And I think that's the hope one sees, and in little gestures, because what your neighbor does, or what's happening on the street, and what's happening while you go to buy your milk, even in just that duration, the little moments of intimacy that can be produced, between two, just through eye exchange, or or a man smoking, so there are several possibilities. I don't think we need to get very
no, I think if we all survive, I think for the art world, it'll also be a recalibration, because in India in the last decade or so, it became so much about the market, no? And it's not that we don't need to earn a living, but one has to find other ways. We can't just depend on this gallery and the godforsaken auctions and that kind of world. We have to renegotiate what this art world is going to be, both for its dissemination and for its market. I don't think this kind of art market is going to sustain at all. And yet people would like to have some form of art. People would like to have something that fires the imagination. And sorry to say, but I'm back to the book. It's all about the book.
And we hope that museums will start reopening.
Yeah.
But now this negotiation would be very interesting and important, how we navigate this.
Yeah, I imagine at KNMA we'll have to book slots.
Yeah.
And then there'll be a time limit, and I can't come and spend the whole day there, but maybe I get 2 hours or something, because I can't wait to see the Zarina show.
Yeah, we're all waiting to go back.
Yeah.
And it had just opened, and we had to close it. I think we are running out of time.
Oh yeah, we're way over time.
We're way over time. Let me see if there are some more questions urgent questions.
But not about black and white, not about woman.
Okay, I'll quickly put forth this question. Do you feel that art should be accessible, since photo books are expensive? How do you see accessibility as a value that can be addressed?
So I think Instagram is doing great things for the image, but I think photo books, the cost is, that's a very important question. The cost is really a problem. And it's a much longer conversation that probably needs to be had with a more focused group. But I'm hoping there might be a situation where I have a book going by the existing edition model, where I have a special edition, which is say 20,000 rupees, and it's an edition of 10. And then I have a very large edition of 10,000 books, which are 200 rupees each. So somehow, because those photo books need to be a lot more accessible. And, in New York, $70 may not be a lot of money. And I'm sure now it is. But those prices just can't work in India. So, even 5,000 rupees, 3,000 rupees, it's a lot of money to put into a book. So photographers and bookmakers need to think about, and I don't necessarily mean going the zine route, because I do think there's something beautiful to the object of the book, but we're going to have to find ways that are a lot more accessible to people, both in cost and in availability. So the grocery store again. My dream would be if you can go to the grocery store and buy a book of mine when you buy your milk and you buy your butter. And maybe there's a machine there, and you can just say, okay, this book, this artist, that artist, and they just come out like cigarette packs used to. That's an idea, no? It's just, I miss a group to brainstorm all this with. It's just me. It used to be Walter, and Steitel is far away. I miss this sort of, let's find another way. Maybe the younger generation is full of it and I just don't have access to that world. But we have to find other ways.
But you're quite connected to a lot of artists in Goa with this collective of photographers that you've been working with.
Yeah.
I don't know if this is the forum to talk about it, but
the book builders. Yes, yes. Oh, they're wonderful. I think they're all watching and I love them very much. And I think they love coming to Salegaon as well. And that's just a 1-week residency where they live in the house and we just work with images, cutting them, making different sequences out of them, tearing it up, doing it again. But there's also a group of Goa Artist Collective. And yeah, I mean, the hope is really in that generation. No, I don't see the hope for huge shifts in how we think about photography in my generation. It's all pretty fixed between the photo festivals and that kind of world. I think it's the younger people that are the hope. But no, I want more. I'd love to be able to have this conversation with 100 of them.
Well, now
I can't teach, so.
The web makes it possible without you going out.
True.
I mean,
True.
it has always been, it's always been there.
Yeah, yeah.
Now maybe that we are reaching out to a different set of audiences.
Right. Yeah, because I need to find photographers who are not stuck on the photograph. That's just the beginning of photography. So it's not easy to find photographers who are willing to go beyond the image and say the image is just my raw material. I can only have this conversation with people once they accept that, no?
Yeah. So maybe on that note, we'll close the session today.
I'd love to go on and on. But yes, we have to let people go.
Yeah, so thank you so much, Dayanita.
Thank you so much. I was so excited. And I thought I would get a stomach ache, like, you know, in childhood before a birthday party. And that's why all this lipstick. And I guess it's just so nice to have like a big conversation. And with all the people I can't see, I would have loved to see them.
Yeah, so thank you, Dayanita. See you again.
Thank you all who spent this time listening. And think about the photo as just raw material. And think about grants, which are just about giving.
Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you.